G'day, I'm Paul. So, ute manufacturers are moving towards, I guess, making their cars a bit more eco-friendly, partly due to governments changing rules and all that sort of stuff. But Toyota, I think, are doing it the smart way. They're not going down the path of an electric ute or a plug-in hybrid ute because they're kind of useless at the job of being a ute. So instead, these guys are going down the path of hybridization, which is something that Toyota has done for a long time. Difference here though is this isn't really a hybrid, so it's kind of rolling over a little bit when it comes to hybridization. But anyway, we'll entertain it, see what it's like. So this is what the industry calls a mild hybrid, and it's basically where you use a 48-volt system to run some of the accessories but not actually drive the vehicle. And I'll explain how that works a little bit later on. So you can actually option this on some elements of the HiLux range, or if you go for this top spec model, the Rogue, it comes standard with this technology. So what does this compete with? Well, traditionally the HiLux competes with things like the Ford Ranger, the Isuzu D-Max, Mitsubishi Triton, that kind of thing. But there is no other real competitor at the moment in this space that is doing hybridization, certainly not this type. There are emerging brands out there that are actually starting to do this type of technology, but there isn't really anything from the mainstream brands just yet. Now, today we're going to do just a bit of a condensed review. We've already reviewed the Rogue. Nothing else is really different here. So today we're going to focus primarily on how this drives both on and off-road. We're also going to do some towing testing as well, because in our big ute test, we actually did giant stretch of towing testing, and I want to compare those results with this to see A, whether this is more efficient, and B, whether it's faster as well. So we're going to do all of that, but it will be a slightly more condensed review. If you do want to see a full review of the Rogue, click on the link in the description below, but if not, continue watching. We're going to go over all the stuff that has changed. Now, how much is it going to cost you? So the Rogue is priced now at just under $72,000. So it has crept up in price. If that is too expensive, the entire range available with this mild hybrid tech kicks off at around 54 grand. Now, if you do want to skip ahead to other parts of this review, you can use the time codes that are on the screen, or if you're on YouTube, you can scroll down and use the chapters below. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon. And by the way, are you in the market for a dual cab ute? If so, have you heard of Help Me CarExpert? All you need to do is go to Google, type in Help Me CarExpert, or scan the QR code on your screen. It will take you to the CarExpert website. It's not just me or Sean doing the video stuff. We're like a big company, 60 full-time employees, and on our website you're going to find news, reviews, and also our car chooser tool. If you're unsure which car you want, all you do is enter in all of your requirements. It'll spit out a stack of options. You can read the reviews, watch the videos, and then we can even put you in touch with one of our friendly dealers. Now let's talk about exterior design. Optional colors, $675. I'm going to condense this section just a little bit because visually this doesn't look any different to the Rogue that we tested previously. But Rogue, it is all about buffness. If you don't want to go down the path of the GR Sport version, you've got the Rogue here, which is the slightly more luxurious version, but on the wider wheel track as well. So you're still getting the benefits of the adjustments they made to the suspension. Down the front here, a lot of plastic cladding there. And actually, you know, I saw a first generation of, or the pre-facelift version of this HiLux right after it was launched. And it looks so narrow compared to this. This has really evolved nicely, and to me it actually looks pretty nice and tough. So I don't know if you think the same, but I quite like what it looks like at the moment. LED headlights you've got there, LED fog lights as well. Around the side here, you've got a set of 18-inch alloy wheels on a darker wheel finish. Now, the reason this has this wheel cladding is because for the Rogue version, you've got extended track at the front and the rear, extended stabilizer bar at the front. You also have a stabilizer bar included at the rear as well. So this is more designed for that sort of sportier drive behind the wheel. That also means that you're getting this wheel arch cladding here because they've had to push those tires out a little bit. So that sort of gives you that sort of off-road vibe, and also covers off those tires to meet all of our design rules requirements. You got indicator built into the wing mirror there. Plastic side steps, which look just a little bit cheap there compared to the GR Sport top spec model. You've got privacy glass. Rogue over here with this sail plane. Around the back here, I mentioned you've got the inclusion there of the stabilizer bar, but what they've also done for Rogue and GR Sport is they've pushed the damper outboard of the chassis rails, so that has given them that performance advantage for cornering, which we discovered actually makes a big difference there between SR5 and Rogue, so you do definitely notice that. And also disc brakes on the rear there as well, and then the wheel arches that protrude. Come around to the rear. I want to run you through some of these specs. Now around the back here, despite the fact that this is now hybridized with that mild hybrid system and all of the extra components add weight, so you've got a battery that's been included under the rear bench seat, you've also got a motor generator that's been included within the transmission, but it does replace the starter motor, and that means that they've been able to keep the curb weight the same. That means you're getting the same payload as well, which is around, well, just under that 900 kilo mark, still getting 3.5 ton brake towing capacity. So the whole logic behind this mild hybrid system is they didn't want to compromise what you could already do with the Rogue, because no one wants to be buying a vehicle with compromises just to meet some lofty emissions goal that someone has set somewhere when you're actually buying this vehicle to do work. So that is something to keep in mind. The Rogue, I know I said this is going to be condensed, but I just got to point this out. I love the fact that this has carpets inside. And look, to be honest, I did joke about this when we first reviewed it. I thought it was just a little bit ridiculous, but I have found a use for them. I'm currently in the process of moving home, and guess what? The carpets stopped all my stuff sliding about the place here in the tray. So they do have a purpose. If you're moving home, carpets are wonderful. Just as long as you take your shoes off when you're loading stuff in there. All right, let's hop inside. I want to run you through the interior and then we are going to go for a spin. So we are inside the HiLux Rogue. This is all going to look very familiar because they really haven't changed much here. And I'm just going to run you through the stuff that they have changed, just a high level overview of the features that you already know about. If you do want to see a detailed review of this car, click on the link in the description below. That's where we went through all of the details in a bit more detail. So push button start once you're inside, small 8-inch infotainment screen. Unfortunately, this hasn't really been updated, so it's not a modern infotainment system like we're finding in some of the newer Toyota products. You do still get remote connectivity, but you don't get all of the sort of fancy features that you're finding in the new generation of cars. Beneath that, dual zone climate control. You can see here the button for the stop start system. Wireless phone charging, which is cool to see now. That used to just be a little slot for your phone. Now it's a wireless phone charger. Don't know how useful it is though, because if you do rest your phone on there without a sort of case on it, it will just sort of slide around as you go around corners. So probably not the most useful sort of location or size for that. You do have this little sort of phone slot just there. This used to be a cup holder, but now this is where you're going to find drive mode selector for the new multi-terrain setup, and also the drive modes that you have access to for on-road driving as well. In terms of your connectivity ports, you've got two 12-volt outlets, a USB port in here, and then you also have a power point in the center console as well, which is definitely good to see. If you do jump over to the second row though, you're going to find not a huge amount of leg room. So knee room's compromised, toe room is compromised as well. And where you used to have storage under both seats, you only have storage on the driver's side now, because the passenger side not only doesn't open for you, it probably opens for the dealership so that they can fix stuff, but that is where you're going to find the small battery for the mild hybrid system that is fitted to this car. So if you did use that space previously, that is now gone. They have added USB ports in the back though, which is good to see. You still have air vents there and also a window that goes all the way down. So it is a pretty standard place to be, but this does feel premium enough for this sort of price point. It would just be nice to see bigger infotainment system on the go here as well. And the camera isn't very good either, and it does come with all the sort of latest safety bells and whistles, but the camera itself is just such low quality. I really don't understand how they've managed to find such a low quality camera in a new car today. Righto, so we've just hit the road in the Rogue, 48 volt. Now, immediately, one of the things I noticed with this straight off the bat is gentle throttle applications. It is way, way more responsive. So it was the case previously that it was better when they upgraded it to 500 Newton meters, but it was the case previously with HiLux. Basically, it had to dive back through gears for it to actually be engaged and do anything. This system now makes a difference. Now, let me explain how it all works. So under the bonnet is a 2.8 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder diesel engine, makes 150 kilowatts of power, 500 Newton meters of torque. So that is unchanged, and that is regardless of the hybrid assistance. Now, it isn't a typical hybrid system like you find in other Toyota products. So in other Toyota products, the hybrid system is pretty straightforward. It runs the car when it's stationary, and then once the car's moving a little bit, it kicks the engine on, and then during intervals while you're driving under light throttle, it can switch the engine off again. This instance here doesn't switch the engine off at all unless the vehicle is stopped. And the whole rationale behind it is that it's a stop-start system, but stop-start plus. And what I mean by that is it's 48 volts, it has a small battery that sits under that rear seat, and that small battery is lithium ion. And what it does is it has a DC to DC converter to run 12 volt components, so that when the vehicle is off, it can stay off for a longer period because you've got a higher voltage there to run those systems. So when I come to a full stop here, and then we press the brake enough, it'll switch the engine off. No, it won't. So this is the other problem, right? There was a few days ago where this was constantly switching off all the time, and today it's barely switching off at all. So there must be a certain sort of narrow condition band where this works. So you can see here today it's 12 degrees, quite cold outside, so it might be too cold for it to operate. But previously when it has switched off, it has been so smooth. And normally with a diesel, like we tested the Triton recently, it is one of the worst stop-start systems I've ever tested. It shakes the car, it's really rough and slow. This is almost imperceptible, so when it does switch back on, it's really nice and smooth and it just does its job. It actually replaces the starter motor entirely, so you're getting a motor generator start the engine. It also means that it can run at a lower RPM, so the idle speed has been dropped from just over 700 RPM to 600 RPM, so it is quieter and smoother as well when it is idling without that stop-start system working. Now, I know I've just blurted a whole bunch of stuff there at you, but basically the weight difference is around 7 kilograms. But like I said in the intro, the weight hasn't actually changed because they've removed that starter motor. Adding all of these extra components has been offset by the removal of that. Where do you get the benefit though? So it is in fuel economy. They claim a 5% reduction in fuel consumption, and the claim is that it's now 7.8 litres per 100 Ks, whereas previously it was, I think, 8.4. What are we sitting on? Well, we're sitting on 9.5, so we haven't been able to meet that claim and haven't really come close to it either. So, I don't know, it seems to be like the system could be a little bit of a furphy. We're going to do some testing a little bit later on with our trailer dyne to replicate the testing we did with the last Rogue to see whether it does actually make a difference in the real world and whether it actually affects your straight line performance when you're towing and when you're unloaded as well. And it's worth calling out as well that that motor generator adds an extra 12 kilowatts and 65 newton meters of peak power and torque. So although it doesn't change the overall peak power and torque figure, you do feel that when you are accelerating through the rev band. And in fact, you can actually see a little gauge here that shows you your battery when it's in charge mode there when I'm out of the throttle. And then you can see here where I'm rolling onto the throttle, goes into eco, a little bit more goes into power, and you can feel that slight surge in torque. Now let's crank up the speed here to 130. We'll see if it's made any difference at all to the ride component, because this vehicle was soft-ish before this change. We'll see if it is any different now. We do this at 130 k's an hour over our sine waves. Just gives us a really good idea of what body control's like. Yeah, so it's still really quite soft and doesn't have a huge amount of body control at the top there. So yeah, could do with just a little bit more work there in terms of taming the body once that does pick up. Given this has the anti-roll bar at the rear, I would have thought they would have tightened it up a bit, but let's see what it's like once we go for a faster drive. Okay, now we'll go over our bumpy road here. That's what we do at 90 k's an hour, see what it's like. It's a shocker of a road, and it has a condensed sine wave here as well, so let's see how this fares. Okay. Yep, no, it's fine, all good, very nice and comfortable. Now, drive modes. For just normal driving, you have Eco, Normal, and Sport. Let's slot it into Sport, go for a lap around our track, see what that feels like, because this is meant to be the sportier version. So mid-corner there, I can actually feel when I'm rolling onto the throttle that extra assistance from the system. We found as well that compared to the SR5 that doesn't get this wider track or the stabilizer bar at the rear, Rogue actually does feel very sporty in comparison. So obviously not everyone's going to be driving their vehicle like this, but we test all of our cars back to back in the same way just to see what they're like when they are pushed closer towards their limits. Brake pedal feels good with the disc brakes all round. And it actually feels surprisingly eager despite its weight as well. The Rogue has added whole bunch of components there which affects the curb weight, but it actually still feels fairly nimble for a dual cab ute, and it feels quite stable as well. You've just got that surety as well with the stabilizer bar at the rear. It just levels out the ride and just gives it that sort of extra little bit of confidence. So it is still fun to drive despite its age. This platform is ancient now, so yeah, pretty impressed. Let's slot this back into normal mode. All that Sport does is change the throttle map. It doesn't really sort of adjust anything else. Now I'm going to go through these drive modes a little later on when we go off-roading, because they are predominantly here for off-road driving, and I'm keen to see whether they improve some of the sort of traction control issues we've had previously with HiLux in a sort of light off-road setting. One thing I did notice, and I picked this up previously with, actually it was 70 series Land Cruiser as well, Toyota's hydraulic steering system, it just lacks the rigidity when you're really starting to work it. And we've got a little sort of, it's called the city circuit, where they used to do a lot of low speed testing, and we use that just to put a bit of pressure on the cars and throw them around a little bit. And in those scenarios, the steering loads up really heavily when you try and change directions in a hurry. And, you know, again, most people aren't going to be driving like that, but I can see situations where you're off-road where you need to really work the wheel, and it feels like it doesn't have the endurance for that heavy wheel work, and you're going to get to the point where the steering gets heavy all of a sudden, and it really puts you off if you're not expecting it. And that is one of the downfalls of a hydraulic system or an underpowered electric system. I suspect the next generation of HiLux will move to an electrically assisted system, which is what most vehicles in this segment are using these days. Now, what about your road noise? Look, it doesn't feel any better or worse to me than the last Rogue, so this is how it went up against our calibrated sound meter, but yeah, it all feels kind of the same. What about your visibility? So I can see clearly down the front there, the seating position is quite high, big wing mirrors, easy visibility out the rear. You've got litany of cameras there as well, even though they aren't very high quality, but you are covered in that regard. Now, normally we'd go and do some performance testing now, but we're actually going to do that on the bowl as part of our towing test as well. So here's that little section. Okay, so we've got our trusty trailer dyne back. We're going to do some tests, because if you watch our mega four-wheel drive ute comparison where we did off-roading, towing and drag racing, if you didn't watch any of that stuff, there's links in the description below. We use this thing here. It's a trailer dyne that allows us to vary the amount of load that's placed on the vehicle. Think of it as like an anchor, and then using a little computer inside, I can adjust the weight of the anchor and it'll simulate this vehicle having to struggle towing a big trailer up a steep hill. So how do the tests work? Well, I'm going to set this to 3 kilonewtons in load, which matches what we did with our dual cab utes previously. I'll do a 0 to 100 test. Some of the utes that we tested couldn't actually break through 100 k's an hour with the 3 kilonewton load attached. We'll see if the new HiLux can do that. We'll also see how quick it is to 100. I'll then do a lap with the load on around the bowl. The bowl's around 5 kilometers long, and we'll see the fuel economy compared to when the vehicle has no trailer attached to it. And then finally, I'm going to do a 0 to 100 run, a quarter mile run, and then a break from 100 k's an hour, just so we can compare all of these results to the non-hybrid version of the Rogue. So I'm going to settle in, we're going to get everything set up, and we're going to hit the road. Okie dokie, so we have just pulled in after doing our acceleration run and also our fuel economy run. So it's interesting, acceleration, the old HiLux Rogue, 18.4 seconds, 0 to 90. We also didn't break 100 k's an hour in this, just couldn't pull through there with the trailer load on. But old one, 18.4, new one, 15.81. So a significant increase there in the 0 to 90 time, which I thought was really impressive. In terms of fuel economy, also an improvement. So the old one did 29 litres per 100 k's when we had 3 kilonewtons of load on around the bowl for one lap. This one, 28.5. So a marginal improvement there, and that's despite the fact that nothing was actually really happening here as far as I could tell. The battery level didn't change at all. None of these gauges changed between eco, power or charging either, so I can't really explain why the fuel economy was better when the hybrid system wasn't actually doing anything. So that's a bit of an odd one to me. So you can see that performance is improved, economy is improved as well, so it ticks those boxes. And I did try it just before you ask in sport, normal and eco mode. There was no difference in the fuel economy there, and we've tested this previously before. Those drive modes are kind of irrelevant when the car is at full throttle or near full throttle. All they do is change the sensitivity before you sink the slipper in. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed that little test with our trailer dyne. We've removed the trailer dyne, so it's now time to test 0 to 100 unladen. Okay, let's see how it stops from 100 kilometers an hour. Okay, so let's have a look at some of our results. Okay, so big improvement there on 0 to 100. It's now 10.42 seconds compared to 11.2 seconds in the non-hybrid version of the Rogue. And then in terms of braking, I remember with braking in the old one, it was actually pretty impressive compared to some of its peers. This time around, we are talking about 100 to 0 in 3.47 seconds and 44.18 meters. So braking performance is slightly worse. It took a meter longer to stop. So there you go. So overall, it's actually a big improvement here. The hybrid, or the 48 volt mild hybrid stuff, it's actually improved acceleration with a trailer, fuel economy, and it's come at the cost of braking, but that could be due to outside variables, really, to be honest. But yeah, overall an improvement there in terms of straight line performance. Okay, let's do a little bit of light off-roading. It is quite funny. Before we couldn't get the stop-start thing to activate at all, and now it's turning on pretty much every single time. So yeah, look at that, so nice and smooth, love it. Okay, so the whole reason we're doing this light off-roading section is we want to repeat what we did with the last Rogue, just to see if there's any difference at all. So probably won't be, but always worth checking. So the thing I was actually thinking about with this vehicle and this sort of belt-driven motor generator setup is that if you are driving through water, this has a 700mm wading depth. What happens if it gets wet? You don't want it slipping, but they actually have a reinforced system there for the specific reason of it not slipping when it is wet. So they have thought about that. So I don't think our river is too deep today, but we'll go through that anyway and just see how it performs. Now, let's run through the key stats. So ground clearance of 265 millimeters. You've got an approach angle of 31 degrees. That's the angle of the face you can approach before you hit something with the front of the car. And a departure angle of 23 degrees. You have a hill descent control, you have a rear diff lock, and now you've got multi-terrain select along with a bunch of modes that drive modes that you can use. So none of this works in two-wheel drive high range, but like we do with this test and all the other cars, we go over our offset mogul in two-wheel drive first to see how the traction control system works, and then we come back again to have another dip at it. So let's line this up. We'll get that rear wheel lifted off the ground, and then we'll see how well the traction control system works. So there it is there. We've unloaded that rear wheel. I'll actually turn that stop-start system off now as well, and just roll onto the throttle, let traction control do its thing, see how well it works. So leaning on that now, harder, we're now full throttle, and nothing is really happening at all. So I'm gonna do one press of traction control, and we'll just try that now, see how that works. Not doing anything, it's just spinning the wheels. So this actually used to have a system where if you pressed and held the traction control button, it would simulate a limited slip differential. So I don't think this has that anymore as far as I can tell. So I'll give that one more crack now with stability control off. We'll see if that makes any difference. No, it doesn't really make any difference at all. So yeah, still not great here. And the fact that you can't use any of this multi-terrain select functionality in two-wheel drive high range means that you're going to have to switch into four-wheel drive to have access to any of that. So let's whip around the other side and we'll switch into four-wheel drive high range. Sorry, I should have pointed out earlier as well, it's two-wheel drive high range when you're just driving on sealed surfaces. You have four-wheel drive high range available, which you only use on unsealed surfaces, and you have four-wheel drive low range as well. So flick that over to four-wheel drive high range. That's engaged now. So multi-terrain select, let's have a look at what we've got available here. Okay, so multi-terrain select Now let's just go through deep snow, mud, sand, dirt, and auto. Let's try dirt. We'll see how well it... Actually, you know what? Let's leave it in auto. We'll just see how well it does here when we get into a situation where we have both wheels lifted off the ground. I've left traction control on just to let it do all of the legwork for us. So let's kick that rear wheel up. Okay. Forward a touch more. Okay, I'm going to lean on that throttle now. I can feel it biting there. Excellent. That is fantastic. So that has done all of the work for us. That is sensational. So we had the new Triton here the other day, and it really struggled with this really basic stuff. So this has just walked through that, and it appears that full drive high range is where you want to be to access some of these multi-terrain select systems, because that is where you're going to be able to really take advantage of it all. Okay, next up for our light off-roading challenge, we've got the hill. Now, the hill looks very simple and straightforward, but again, we were here on the Triton the other day and it couldn't get up here once we came to a stop. So I'm going to do this twice. Once I'm just going to crawl up with gradual throttle, then I'm going to come back around and stop halfway up and then feed in the throttle and see how it goes. So I'm going to slot this into low range. Okay, activated now. And I'll just have a look if multi-terrain select actually does anything here. Yeah, cool. So same thing. I'll just leave it in auto, see how it goes. I won't lock the rear diff. Actually, you know what? Let's lock the rear diff anyway, just because. There it is, that's locked. Okay, so crawling up first, gradual throttle. See how it goes. It's been resurfaced recently, so it's a little bit loose, but it should be fine. There we go, very nice. It's very nicely controlled. As you just stay gradual on the throttle, it just crawls up on its own very nicely. No issues there at all. Mud bog there. Okay, now we can test our hill descent control. So I'll engage that here in low range. I'll also put our camera on as well, just so we can see what it looks like over the edge there. So camera is such a low quality, but anyway. Okay, so up to the top there. Okay, and let go of the brake and over we go. Yeah, so pretty sort of consistent speed down there without any dramas. By the way, I switched rear diff lock off because hill descent control doesn't work here with the rear diff lock active. So yeah, pretty straightforward. Now take two of our hill. This time I'm going to come around and come to a stop, see what the hill hold function is like, and then we'll take off again. So there it is, about there. Let go of the brake. Nice, got a hill hold, roll onto the throttle. Struggling there. All right, we'll come out of that. I'll just try and get out of that little divot there. Give this a shot. Here we go. Nice, that's better. So you see what it did there is just sorted itself out nice and quickly, and then we just climbed out of that without any dramas at all. Very good. Okay, let's give our rocks a crack. I'm going to slot that into rock mode. See how that performs. Oh, that's interesting. So immediately I can feel the throttle is way softer. So it just means that you're not going to have surges of speed when you go driving over rocks. Literally the last thing that you want. So now you see the soft suspension on road gets you that sort of bounciness over the sine waves, but it's really great out here when you're doing this sort of light off-roading over these rocks. Really nice and comfortable. It's not sort of throwing you around. Brake pedal doesn't feel as touchy as it does in the Prado as well. So yeah, this is excellent. Very nice. Very nice. Cool, beautiful. Okay, so let's go to our river crossing. I mentioned that you've got anti-slip mechanisms on the belt for the motor generator. Let's have a little look here and see how well it actually works. I don't know how much water there is in here because it hasn't really rained all that much recently. Okay, that's just like a... Sorry, this is going to be the worst water crossing you have ever seen. I think a Ford Fiesta could drive through this, so here we go. Oh, I hope we don't drown so deep. Sorry about that. Should have checked it before we came over here. Okay, so Toyota HiLux Rogue, what is it like off-road? Look, It's certainly no worse than the last one that we tested, and if anything, I really love that you've now got this multi-terrain select functionality as well, so it feels like a proper dual cab ute. It is worth calling out though that it would be good to see some of this operational in two-wheel drive, because you can see there that even if you're just doing light stuff or you've got a tyre that's sort of a little off the road, you don't want to have the traction control killing everything for you. So just having the ability to have a slightly better traction control system in two-wheel drive would be appreciated, I reckon. But importantly, the hybrid system has not affected this in terms of any light off-roading. So the HiLux, look, this is the best the HiLux has ever been. They've added all of this fuel efficiency stuff in it, and it hasn't affected performance. Straight line performance is better, fuel economy is better. It's kind of a win-win, and it hasn't affected it in any of this sort of light off-roading stuff. So that is all a win in my books. It is more expensive now, thanks to the technology they've added into it, but it doesn't affect the way that the vehicle drives. It only adds to it. So, should you buy this over some of the competitors? Well, it is still let down by stuff like the infotainment system. This is, it still feels a generation old. It's not the sort of fancy infotainment system you're seeing in other Toyota models, and that will probably come. And I think the ride probably could be slightly improved as well. Outside of that, it is still a really excellent package that you can see why they sell so many of these. They are trusty, dependable, and people just line up to buy them. So let me know in the comments section below, what do you reckon? Do you think this is far enough for hybridization? Do you want to see more hybridization? Would you buy an electric ute? Or should we not get ahead of ourselves yet? Let me know in the comments section below. If you did enjoy this video, please make sure you like it and share it with your mates. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon. But until next time, take it easy.